My son's teacher threw away his packed lunch and refused to believe his allergy was real. I got the call from the school nurse at 12:34 p.m. My 8-year-old was in her office, face swelling, throat tightening, EpiPen already administered. I broke every speed limit getting there. When I burst through the office doors, Caleb was sitting on a cot with hives covering his arms, breathing through a nebulizer mask. The nurse looked at me with barely contained fury. His teacher gave him the cafeteria mac and cheese, she said, after throwing away the lunch you packed. My son has a severe dairy allergy. It's documented. It's in his file. It's been discussed at 3 separate meetings since September. I had done everything right. Before the school year started, I met with the principal, the nurse, and Caleb's teacher, Mrs. Whitmore. I brought his allergist's documentation, his emergency action plan, a letter explaining cross-contamination risks. I provided safe snacks for the classroom. I sent his lunch every single day in a bright red lunchbox with his name and dairy allergy written in permanent marker on the lid. Mrs. Whitmore had nodded through the entire meeting, signed the acknowledgement forms, promised she understood. That was 5 months ago. But 3 weeks before this happened, Mrs. Whitmore went on maternity leave. Her long-term substitute was a woman named Mrs. Brennan. I emailed her the first day she started, attaching all of Caleb's documentation. She never responded. I should have followed up harder. The week before the incident, Caleb came home saying Mrs. Brennan told him allergies were mostly in people's heads, and that kids, these days, were too coddled. I emailed her again, CCing the principal. I have screenshots of that email. She replied with one line: "I've been teaching for 30 years. I know how to handle children." I printed that email and put it in my folder. Something told me I'd need it. That Friday, I walked Caleb to his classroom and personally handed his lunchbox to Mrs. Brennan. I reminded her about his allergy. She took the lunchbox without looking at me and said, "I heard you the first time." On the day it happened, Caleb told me later what occurred. When lunchtime came, Mrs. Brennan announced that packed lunches were creating division in the classroom and that everyone would eat the cafeteria meal together like a family. When Caleb tried to explain he couldn't eat the mac and cheese, she told him to stop making excuses. When he said his mom packed him safe food, she walked to his desk, picked up his lunchbox, and dropped it in the trash can in front of everyone. She told him if he didn't eat what was provided, he wouldn't eat at all. Another student tried to speak up for him. Mrs. Brennan told that student to mind their own business. Caleb ate 3 bites before his lips started tingling. He told her something was wrong. She told him he was being dramatic. By the time another teacher passing in the hallway noticed Caleb's face swelling, he was struggling to breathe. That teacher rushed him to the nurse. Mrs. Brennan didn't follow. She stayed in the classroom and continued lunch like nothing happened. The nurse found his EpiPen in his backpack, administered it, and called 911. She also called me. When paramedics arrived, Caleb's oxygen levels had dropped dangerously low. They transported him to the hospital, and I rode in the ambulance holding his hand, watching monitors beep warnings. He spent 6 hours under observation. His throat nearly closed completely. The next morning, I walked into the principal's office with my folder. Inside was every email I'd sent, every document I'd provided, and the signed acknowledgement form from the beginning of the year. I also had a written statement from the other teacher who found Caleb, and a statement from the student who tried to defend him. The principal looked pale. She told me Mrs. Brennan claimed Caleb never mentioned an allergy. I slid the printed email across her desk, the one where Mrs. Brennan said she'd heard me the first time. I asked if throwing away a child's medically necessary lunch and forcing him to eat an allergen counted as hearing someone. The principal couldn't answer. Mrs. Brennan was called in. She walked into that office like she expected to be defended. When she saw me, her face hardened. She said I was exaggerating, that Caleb was fine now, that parents like me were the reason teachers were leaving the profession. I played the voicemail the nurse had left me, the one describing exactly what condition my son was in when he arrived at her office. I showed her the hospital discharge papers with anaphylaxis written in bold letters. I read aloud the email where she dismissed my concerns. Her voice got smaller with each piece of evidence. The principal asked her to step outside. Through the glass window of the office, I watched Mrs. Brennan's face crumble as 2 district administrators arrived to escort her out of the building. She was terminated that afternoon. The school district settled with us out of court 4 months later, but I still keep that red lunchbox on a shelf in our kitchen, right next to Caleb's EpiPen.